Chapter 2941. Guze was thinking that Lin Cece didn't want to sit with him anymore and wanted to go back. In the end, she didn't dare to mention it because Guze scared her. But when they got out of the car, the little girl almost cried and looked at him with dissatisfaction. He actually brought her to the People's Square to see pigeons in the summer. Lin Cece was wearing a white dress and sat on the bench. She didn't say anything for a long time and just looked at the pigeons. She didn't know if they would taste good if they were roasted. Her world was very simple. It was Lan Yu and food. She didn't like men around her, stinky men, and they had no money. Guze sat next to her and handed her a bottle of purified water. "Drink some." The little fool glanced at him and felt a little speechless. A man who couldn't even afford a cup of Haagen-Dazs. But she was really thirsty, so she took it. She couldn't open it, so she looked at Guze. Guze opened it for her and handed it back to her. Lin Cece drank the water, but her eyes still fell on the fat pigeons. After a while, she turned her head and asked, "Can you cook?" Guze was stunned for a moment. "Yes." Lin Cece's expression was a little speechless. She still looked disgusted. "I'm not full, and you don't have money. You catch 2 pigeons and bring them back. I want to eat roasted pigeons." As soon as she finished speaking, Guze almost spat out the water in his mouth. "Cece, what did you say?" The beautiful little fool opened a pair of black and white eyes and pointed at her belly. "I'm hungry." Guze looked at her thin body and frowned. "Are you hungry?" He remembered that she ate a lot of food in the restaurant, which was enough for a man. While he was thinking, Lin Cece nodded. "I'm not full." She looked at him. "Just 2. I'll take them home and roast them. It won't cost you anything." She whispered, "You don't have money either." Guze didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at the pigeons and then at her. "Look at how cute these little creatures are. It would be a pity to eat them." Lin Cece stared at him for a long time before saying, "The steak you ate for lunch today was also an animal." Judging from his expression, she could tell that he was obviously looking for an excuse. Guze sighed softly. "All right, I'll try my best to catch 2. Can I make a phone call first?" With little animals to eat, Lin Cece was quite easy to talk to. Guze held the phone and rubbed her little head. Then, he walked away and called his assistant. "Find me an 80-square-meter apartment right now. I want it to be second-hand and decorated. Leave the key at the door within half an hour. Also, prepare some ingredients in the fridge, especially 2 pigeons, the kind with their feathers plucked clean." With that, he hung up the phone. The little fool ran over with 1 pigeon, 2 pigeons, 3 pigeons, 4 pigeons, 6 pigeons. Guze rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He looked at her and furrowed his brows. "How did you catch these pigeons?" The pigeons in the People's Square were all intelligent. There had never been one missing in the past few years. Yet, she had caught 6 pigeons in just 2 minutes. Everyone was watching. Guze had never been so distressed before. He coughed lightly. "Cece, I'll buy them for you, all right? The ones I buy are dead. These are alive and delicious." Lin Cece was a little fool who cared about quality. Chapter 2942. Really, she was clearly in disbelief. Only after Guze's reassurance did she let go of 4 pigeons. She held onto the other 2 tightly, ready to pluck their feathers and roast them. Guze had his face covered the entire way because there were people taking pictures of them with their phones. He was sure that the next day he would be famous and scouted. Compared to his uneasiness, Lin Cece was much more relaxed. She felt that these pigeons were ownerless and anyone could catch them. However, there were indeed many people who caught them, but no one had ever succeeded. She was the only one who caught 6 in one go. Just as she was feeling proud of herself, a little boy pointed at her hand and made a fuss. "Mummy, look at that person's hand. He only has 4 fingers. Lin Cece shrank back immediately, almost dropping the pigeon in her hand. Guze looked over and saw that her face was pale. Clearly, the little fool knew how to be sad after being poked at her sore spot. Guze took the pigeon from her hand and looked at the little boy, his voice soft and cold. "Apologize." The little boy made a face at him. "I'm not apologizing. She's already missing a finger, and she's not in her right mind. She's a fool." Guze narrowed his eyes. "Apologize." He went forward and lifted the little boy up by his collar. "Or I'll throw you down." The little boy covered his face in fear, but the words that came out of his mouth were even worse. At that moment, the child's mother came over and shouted at Guzé in exasperation. "Let go, my son. Who are you to be so lawless?" Guzé looked at the woman and said coldly, "I'll naturally let him go if he apologizes." The woman started to make a fuss. "You look pretty normal. Why are you with a retard? Did my son say something wrong? She's a retard. Even if I hit her, she probably wouldn't retaliate." With that said, the burly woman rushed in front of Lin Cece and gave her a slap. Lin Cece's palm-sized face was immediately filled with 5 red marks, and even half of it was swollen. Tears gathered in her eyes and wanted to fall, but she held them back. Her face hurt, but her heart hurt even more, as if it had been pierced by needles. She was missing a finger. She was mentally abnormal, but no one in the courtyard had ever said anything about her. They all said that Cece was very obedient and that Cece was normal. So she was abnormal. Lin Cece stood there in a daze, without any reaction. The burly woman was extremely pleased. "Look, she's just a fool. She won't even budge when I hit her." At this time, Guzé gently put down the child in his hand and slowly walked to the woman's side. He handed the plump pigeons to Lin Cece. "Take them well. We'll roast them tonight." He decided that if he didn't eat the ones in the fridge, he would eat these two for the little fool. Lin Cece took the things in his hands. She remained silent, but her body was trembling. Guzé looked at the woman and said coldly, "She won't fight back, but I will." After that, he slapped the woman. He was a mature man. When he used enough strength, his strength was astonishing. Moreover, he had the intention to help the little fool vent her anger, so he used all of his strength. The burly woman was hit to the side, and her face instantly swelled up like a steamed bun. The woman howled, "Is there still law in broad daylight? Is a man who hits a woman still a man?" Guzé ignored her and left with the dumbfounded little fool. Chapter 2943. However, the burly woman wasn't willing to give up. She dragged him to the police station. In the end, he really went there. He brought Lin Cece and the 2 plump pigeons with him. In the police station, the woman was extremely fierce. She claimed that she wanted to tear Guzé and the little fool apart. Of course, if this good-looking and respectable man was willing to serve her once, she could let him go. The woman was the wife of the leader of the police station, and she was in charge of this area. Therefore, she was very arrogant and had to give in to her no matter what. At this time, she was making a scene in the police station. Her leader's husband was outside with Xiao Qing and the others. He was having a good time when he received a call from his subordinate, saying that his sister-in-law had been bullied and was making a scene in the police station. Although the leader didn't like his wife, when he heard that his precious son had also been bullied, he pulled up his pants and kissed the little vixen. "Baby, be good. I'll be back in a while. Don't put on your clothes." After saying that, he rushed back to the police station. He wanted to support his wife, but he was stunned when he saw Guzé. He was tongue-tied for a long time before he squeezed out a voice. "President Gu, why are you here?" Then he slapped his head. "Oh my God, President Gu, it's you." This is really a case of the flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple, not recognizing family. Compared to his warmth, Guzé was cold for a long time. "Can we go now?" The leader said repeatedly. He allowed it, but his wife didn't. She said through her teeth, "How dare you let them go?" One of my teeth was knocked loose. The woman was angry when she saw her man's cowardly look. Did the person in charge of small company have to suck up to him like this? The leader was furious when he heard that. He looked back at his wife and slapped her. "Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Get the hell back home." The woman was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she saw that her husband's neck was full of red marks from the little vixen's scratches. She shouted, "Zhang Fugui, you ungrateful bastard. If it weren't for my father, would you be in your position today? How dare you fool around with women in broad daylight? I'll beat you to death." His sturdy body pounced towards Zhang Fugui, but he accidentally missed. His plump body fell to the ground, and that loose tooth completely fell out. Oh my God! A squeal like that of a pig being slaughtered rang out. Guzé walked out with Lin Cece. Lin Cece was still holding onto the two pigeons. Half an hour later, Gu Zhe and Lin Cece appeared in front of an apartment that was neither old nor new. They took the stairs to the 5th floor. Lin Cece looked at the door and asked, "President Gu, you live here?" Gu Zhe didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He realized that Lin Cece had forgotten everything, but she still had a good concept of money. To put it bluntly, whoever had milk was their mother. He took out a key from under the mattress, opened the door, and stepped aside to let her in first. The door opened, and Lin Cece saw a small apartment. It was not big, and the decorations were simple, but it was quite clean. There was also a smell of disinfectant in the air, like the smell of a hospital. Lin Cece shrank. Like a hospital, Gu Zhe also smelled it. He frowned and handed the pigeons to her. "I'll get something." Chapter 29:44. He found a bottle of men's cologne and casually sprayed it on her face. Lin Cece was much more relaxed after that. Gu Zhe placed the things down and guided her to the sofa to sit down. He then went to find a gauze and ice to help her apply it. She sat obediently, and he sat across from her, so close to her that their breaths were just inches apart. "Does it still hurt?" Gu Zhe asked her softly and looked at her little face. Her face was very small, only the size of a palm, but her eyes were big and innocent. Especially her curly eyelashes. It made her look much smaller than other girls of her age. Gu Zhe remembered that Lin Cece was already 20 years old 3 years ago. She was about 23 or 24 years old now, but she looked like she was in her 20s. He couldn't help but think that he was almost 35 years old, which was a round older than her. He smiled. No wonder he doted on this little fool. She was so cute. It turned out that he was so much older than her. He looked at her, and she looked back at him. She pursed her lips. "It doesn't hurt anymore." "How can it not hurt when it's so swollen?" He sighed and helped her more carefully, afraid that she would have bad memories. As he was busy, Lin Cece sized him up and asked after a while, "What do you mean by fooling around? Is fooling around with women the same as playing with women?" Gu Zhe closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he thought to himself, she really knew how to ask questions. In the past, Lin Cece loved fooling around, but now she was so silly that she didn't even know what fooling around was. Thus, he coughed lightly. Fooling around is an abnormal relationship without marriage as the prerequisite. Lin Cece raised her finger and made a very embarrassing gesture. However, her little face was calm. "Is that so? Not getting married, male and female, is that so?" Gu Zhe's Adam's apple kept rolling. What kind of troublemaker did he find out? How was he supposed to answer such a question? He thought about it and nodded. Something like that. The little fool did not give him a chance to breathe. His gaze became even more intense. "Then have you ever fooled around with a woman?" Cough, cough. Gu Zhe couldn't stop coughing, and tears were coming out his eyes. He looked at the little fool with a complicated expression. He put down the ice cube in his hand and said firmly, "No." Lin Cece asked again, "Are you married?" "No." Gu Zhe said very seriously. The little fool tilted his head and thought for a long time before looking at him doubtfully. "You're still a virgin?" Puff. Gu Zhe couldn't hold it in any longer and choked. The little fool's expression was somewhat disappointed. "Look, you're clearly lying. This is how men look when they lie." Gu Zhe didn't know what to do with her, so he said softly, "Cece, it's not like that. Many things have two sides. Just because it's not like this doesn't mean it's definitely like that. Do you understand?" He said this in hopes that she would be able to avoid it. But the little fool was very stubborn. She only believed in one thing. That is that you fooled around with a woman before. To this, Gu Zhe couldn't refute. He did have a woman before, and it was the kind of woman that he used to satisfy his physical needs. In the past 8 years, he kept his chastity for a certain woman. It wasn't until a long time after she remarried that he had another woman. He bought her from a brothel. He hadn't done it for a long time, so he didn't feel much about it. Chapter 29:45. But at this moment, Lin Cece, the little fool, was asking him like that, and he was actually a little embarrassed. She was just a little fool who didn't know anything, and he was actually embarrassed. Gu Zhe let out a long breath. "That's not fooling around. He thought for a long time before he came up with an appropriate description. That's a way to make everyone happy. The little fool looked at him. Is that kind of thing very happy? Guzé coughed lightly. It's all right. Right after he said that, the little fool climbed onto his lap and looked at him eagerly. I want to try. Guzé was stunned. Before he came back to his senses, the little fool had already hugged him and kissed his lips, his face, and his neck. She had seen it on TV. Fooling around was like this. Although Guzé was poor, he was good-looking, so Lin Cece was willing to give it a try with him. It was like that person on TV who would give money to a woman after having fun. Guzé probably didn't have any money to give. Although it was a pity, Lin Cece still asked carefully, "Will you give me money?" Being kissed like that, Guzé's blood was boiling. Being asked like that, it was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. What did this little fool think she was? He squinted his eyes and reached out to take her down and put her aside. He let out a breath with difficulty. No! The little fool seemed a little disappointed. She stared at him for a long time before trying her best to climb onto his body again. After Guzé took her down, she climbed up again and was very persistent. In the end, Guzé pressed on her shoulder and asked seriously, "Do you really want to try it?" If she had to go through all this, he would rather it be him and not someone else. The little fool nodded her head gently and looked at his handsome face. Guzé pursed his beautiful lips and said in a hoarse voice, "If I have to take off your dress, will you be willing?" Her answer was to do as he asked immediately. Her actions were extremely fast. Guzé let out a deep sigh. Without saying anything else, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Not the way a man treats a girl, but the way a man treats a woman. Fierce and wild. On one hand, he wanted to scare her so that she wouldn't dare to make such a request to a stranger again. She was already like this, and he was afraid that she would suffer. On the other hand, he hadn't done it with a woman for a long time. Even though he was doing it to scare her, he couldn't control his body and was still aroused. He hugged her and kissed her ferociously. His large palms also stirred up a storm without hesitation. That little fool who only wanted to be happy was frightened and began to struggle. No, she was extremely afraid. She was afraid that this kind of feeling would make her feel like she was being carried up high in the sky and unable to come down. There were also countless hands in her head. She was terrified. She didn't want him to touch her. She began to struggle and cry. Her tears blurred her little face, making her look very pitiful. Guzé only came back to his senses when she bit his neck. When he came back to his senses, he was shocked to realize that she had struggled for so long, but he had not let go of her. He always felt a little guilty in his heart, so he subconsciously coaxed her for a while. No matter how uncomfortable it was, he didn't continue. Perhaps it was because he had helped her to adjust her clothes. Perhaps it was because his embrace was very warm. Perhaps it was because he promised not to touch her again. Chapter 29:46. Guzé's heart was a little wet. As a man, he could feel that she was afraid of this sort of thing. It wasn't because she didn't have any memories of this sort of thing. Rather, it was because she must have had a bad experience, and that bad experience might have caused her to become like this. He closed his eyes slightly and hugged her petite body. He patted her back gently, comforting her silently. Slowly, she calmed down. However, she still hugged him, relying on him. This feeling of being needed was so damn intoxicating. Guzé didn't know if Lan Yu felt the same way he did. However, in his heart, he could already feel that Lin Cece was a kind of poison. It was best for him to stay away from her. At this moment, she had calmed down. However, his body was still like that, and he desperately wanted to take care of it. Thus, he coaxed her to sit down while he went to the bathroom. Closing the bathroom door, he didn't rush to take care of it. Instead, he lit a cigarette and took a few puffs. When it didn't calm down, he pressed down on his belt. Just when everything was thrown into the air and he couldn't control it, the door was pulled open. The little fool stood at the door and looked at his hand quietly. Then, she looked at his face, which was contorted out of control. Guzé had always known that a man's emotional changes wouldn't look good. Thus, even if he was with a woman he didn't know before, he would always turn off the lights. That kind of all-out love was for the most intimate of lovers. He had never given it to any woman before. However, At this moment, the little fool saw that he was in a sorry state. He pursed his lips and said calmly, "Get out." He tried his best to be gentle. However, not only did the little fool not leave, she was still looking at him curiously. He thought that he was probably too gentle, or perhaps she was too silly. She was so scared that she was crying, but now she had completely forgotten about it. "Get out," he said again. This time, his voice was a little strict. As expected, the little fool was startled. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she ran out as though she was hurt. The cigarette in Guzé's hand had already been extinguished. He lit it up and slowly finished his cigarette. However, he had been disturbed, so he didn't have that feeling anymore. After taking a shower, he put on his clothes and walked out. He thought that the little fool would cry, but she was already sitting on the sofa, looking at the TV with snacks from God knows where. Her little face was white and innocent. For a moment, Guzé did not know what to say. This kind of stupidity made his heart ache, but at the same time, he was a little envious. Perhaps others saw her as a little fool and thought that she was crazy. There was nothing wrong with her, but in her world, she was happy. Guzé suddenly understood why Lan Yu had been protecting her and keeping her safe. It was probably because of envy. Only those who were unhappy would be envious of her. Guzé suddenly remembered that he was not happy like this, right? He lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. He walked over and rubbed her head. "Do you want to see me roast pigeons?" The little fool tilted his head and looked at him, his eyes full of disapproval. "Pigeons are so cute. How can you eat them?" Guzé's face froze up. Instantly, he felt as though he was struck by lightning. She was the one who wanted to eat pigeons and even caught 6 of them at once. She was drooling in the public square, and now she said that they were cute and could not be eaten. It was as though she was saying that he was cruel. He rubbed his forehead and smiled. What about the ones that she caught? Chapter 29:47. Feeling a little mischievous, he coughed out gently. "But I've already killed them." "Killed?" The little fool put down the snacks in her hands and looked at him with her big eyes. Then she grabbed his arm and bit down. She bit down really hard. She was angry. Guzé let her bite him as he lowered his eyes. However, his heart was in turmoil. After spending time with her today, he felt that she was quite normal, just a little silly. But now, he knew that there was something wrong with her, and it was quite serious. His heart ached slightly as he reached out and stroked her long hair, saying softly, "I lied to you. They're still alive and well." His little fool didn't believe him, so he went to the kitchen to get 2 live ones for her to look at. As Lin Cece looked at them, her eyes sparkled as she smiled at him. It was a sweet smile, but to Guzé it was bitter. He didn't know how to get along with her. He didn't know how to face her smiles or how to face her cries. Instinctively, he knew that he would have to pay a price for being with this little fool for a long time, and he didn't intend to tie his life to a little fool. Hence, he calmed down and cooked for her. After eating with her, he said that he would send her back. Even though Lin Cece was silly, her senses were extremely sharp. She could clearly tell a person's attitude toward her. The change in Guzé's attitude before and after had hurt her heart. Even though he didn't have money, she still wanted to force herself to be friends with him. But now, it was clear that he wasn't going to take her out to play. On the way back, she took a taxi and was even quieter than when she came. Her little face looked out of the window, not making a sound. Guzé gave her the cold shoulder for a long time and felt a little guilty. Hence, he said softly, "I'll buy you some snacks later." It was her favorite food, so it should make her happy. Lin Cece looked up and said with some disinterest, "Forget it. You don't even have money. Keep it and fool around for once." Guzé's face froze. He felt that he couldn't teach her these things anymore in the future. What if she became bad? What if she used her beauty to exchange for money in the future? Would those bad men bully her? As he thought of this, his heart ached even more. Momo patted his head. "I'll buy you food. I still have money." She still couldn't feel happy when he was so nice to her. Somehow, she could feel that this kindness was different from before. The little fool ignored him, and Guzé was not happy either. He did not say a word until he got out of the car at the sanatorium. Unexpectedly, Lan Yu arrived first and was talking to Mr. Lin and Mrs. Lin. Guzé had not seen them for a long time. Now that he looked at them carefully, he realized that they had changed a lot, especially Mr. Lin. He was no longer as high-spirited as he used to be. He sighed in his heart, then looked down at the unhappy little fool. "Your parents are here. Go quickly. Remember to greet them." Without realizing it, he had taken on the responsibility of teaching her. Lin Cece slowly ran over and called out to him listlessly. She still looked unhappy. Even towards Lan Yu, she was indifferent. Lan Yu knew her the best. Seeing her like this, he raised his head and looked at Gu Zhe, who was not far away, and smiled. "Did you bully her? How would I dare to bully your little darling?" Gu Zhe sighed softly. "I have something to ask you later." Chapter 2948. He narrowed his eyes and thought about it. After a while, he smiled faintly. "I also have something to ask you." Both men had something on their minds, so they left together soon. When the car drove away, Gu Zhe saw the little fool looking at his car for a long time. He made up his mind and forced himself to ignore it. He also thought that in the future, they wouldn't meet again. When he and Lan Yu drove back to the city, it was already night, so they went to a club and got a private room. The manager came over and asked carefully, "Boss Lan, do you need princess?" Lan Yu lit a cigarette skillfully, looked at Gu Zhe and chuckled. "Boss Gu probably needs it." After saying that, his eyes became sharp. Gu Zhe narrowed his eyes. "No need." The manager left uncomfortably and soon ordered all the dishes. Lan Yu and Gu Zhe ate face-to-face and asked, "Did you take her to the square today?" Gu Zhe frowned and put down the knife and fork in his hand. "Lan Yu, you followed me?" Lan Yu went straight to the point. "I was concerned about Cece. I didn't mean to follow you, Boss Gu." Gu Zhe was a little dissatisfied with his strange tone, so he naturally lost his appetite. He threw down the napkin in his hand and sneered. "What else do you know?" Compared to him, Lan Yu seemed to have a better appetite. "You asked your assistant to prepare a second-hand apartment in the city. You told Cece that you didn't have money, and you took a taxi everywhere you went. Gu Zhe, what are you planning? Do you want to cheat her body or her heart?" Boss Lan, you really know everything." Gu Zhe smiled coldly. "Since you care so much, why don't you marry her? I treat her like a sister, so I won't do anything beastly." After Lan Yu finished speaking, he slowly stood up and grabbed Gu Zhe's collar. His voice was cold and hoarse. "I'm telling you, Gu Zhe, Cece is now a blank piece of paper. If you treat her well, she'll take it seriously. If you don't want her, don't touch her and don't touch her body. Understand? She's not someone that can be bought with money." Gu Zhe was still looking at Lan Yu. "It seems that you treasure her very much. The wounds on the body can be treated, but the wounds on the heart are much more difficult." Lan Yu regained his composure. "If you knew how she survived, you would know why I treated her like this." He looked up, his eyes dim. "She was raped, and it wasn't just one man. She was pregnant, but I asked the doctor to abort her because I didn't know which man's child was, and I didn't know if the child was healthy or not. Gu Zhe, she might not be able to have a child. Cece can only be a sister like me, a little animal. She's not suitable to be anyone's lover, understand?" After he finished speaking, Gu Zhe clenched his fists. Rape, pregnancy, abortion, although he had already guessed it, hearing Lan Yu say it out loud, it was a different experience. He closed his eyes slightly and said in a suppressed voice, "I will." When he slowly opened his eyes, he said, "I will stay away from her. Don't worry, I didn't really touch her." Lan Yu's expression softened a little. "I believe you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such an attitude." After Lan Yu finished eating, he left first, while Gu Zhe sat in the dark room for a long time. His assistant gave him a call and asked him if he was going to rent the apartment for the long term. Chapter 2949. After hanging up the phone and smoking a cigarette, he dialed his assistant's number again. By that apartment. The assistant was tongue-tied. What was wrong with Mr. Gu? That medieval apartment was not worth investing in at all. However, his subordinates did not dare to question Mr. Gu's decision, so they immediately went to do as he said. In less than half an hour, the property ownership certificate was placed in front of Gu Zhe. Gu Zhe looked at it quietly for a long time. The assistant watched from the side, not daring to breathe loudly. Gu Zhe suddenly said, How about this? Transfer the property ownership certificate to Lin Cece's name. Lin Cece? The assistant was confused. Was she Mr. Gu's new lover? Did Mr. Gu have a girlfriend? That couldn't be right. Mr. Gu's assets were tens of billions. If he had a girlfriend, he wouldn't be so stingy. He should at least get a Thompson villa. When did Mr. Gu become so stingy? Guze seemed to have thought of something. He called Lan Yu, but hung up after the call went through. What was he doing now? What was the point of him giving the apartment to Lin Cece? Lin Cece didn't need it all. That silly girl had Lan Yu to take care of her. Why did she need Guze's small apartment? He wanted to leave her a memory, but she could not understand it at all. It was just his wishful thinking. Guze pursed his lips and said calmly, "Forget it." The assistant thought to himself, "What's wrong with Mr. Gu today? Why does he look like a woman on her period?" She didn't dare to say it out loud. She only dared to stand by quietly. About 10 minutes later, Guze looked up at the assistant and said calmly, "You can go back first." The assistant heaved a sigh of relief and left early. Guze also got up. He took the keys and property ownership certificate and went to the apartment. The 2 lively pigeons had been released. There was only one left in the fridge. He took it out and roasted it for himself. When his stomach was a little full, Guze held his forehead and laughed. How did he end up becoming a fool when he met a little fool? He let out a long sigh, threw away the rest of the food, and got up to sleep on the sofa in the living room. At dawn, when he woke up, he suddenly realized that he hadn't slept so well in a long time. When he sat up, he rubbed his forehead and recalled Lan Yu's words. He knew that Lan Yu was reminding him that the little fool was not only stupid, but also had such an unbearable past. Did he want it? Did he want it? He told himself that he couldn't have it. Guze felt that after this night, he should forget about the little fool. From that day onwards, when he met with Lan Yu, he never mentioned Lin Cece, nor did he deliberately think about her. It was as if he was slowly forgetting about her. 1 week later, Lan Yu listened to the secretary's report lazily. His secret, Kevin, was calmly reporting the focus of the next month's work. Suddenly, Lan Yu opened his eyes. "What did you say?" "For our hotel's 20th anniversary, the Public Relations Department invited the recently popular Qin Shun," Kevin repeated. Lan Yu murmured the name softly. "Qin Shun? Whose idea was it?" "It was Manager Hua," Kevin reported truthfully. Lan Yu didn't even think about it. "Replace him. I don't care who it is, as long as it's not Qin Shun." Kevin was new and didn't know about the entanglement between Lan Yu and Qin Shun, so he pursed his lips. "But Qin Shun is the most popular supermodel in the world." Lan Yu frowned. "More popular than Lu Wei?" Chapter 2950. Kevin smiled. "That's hard to say. Lu Wei's ranking is indeed higher than Qin Shen's, but that's only temporary. Qin Shen's popularity is not something that Lu Wei can compare with." Lan Yu's brows furrowed even tighter. He kept looking at Kevin as if he was thinking about something. Kevin was also a thoughtful person, so he coughed lightly. "Boss, choosing Qin Shun is not a mistake. Besides, your relationship with Miss Lu?" Lan Yu suddenly realized that he looked at Qin Shun from a personal point of view, but he looked at Lu Wei from a business point of view. Thinking of this, he was a little stunned. At this moment, Kevin had already made the decision for the boss. "Then we'll still invite Qin Shun?" Lan Yu didn't come back to his senses. He nodded lightly. When he came back to his senses, Kevin had already left. Lan Yu realized what he had said, but it was too late to regret it. At this moment, Kevin had already gone out to send a press release to the Public Relations Department, saying that the Grand Hyatt Hotel had invited Qin Shun for the 20th anniversary party. Naturally, the Public Relations Department also sent out press releases. The mistake was that they had the intention to contact Qin Shen's wife, Sister Drinkwin, but Qin Shun did not agree to it, nor did he sign a contract. This was going to be difficult. Grand Hyatt and the public were celebrating. After the news spread, Qin Shun said lightly in an interview, "I have no such intention." This light sentence was like a slap to Grand Hyatt's face. Junyu headquarters. The president's office. Lan Yu threw down a stack of newspapers and looked at Kevin. "Can you explain?" Kevin was scolded right to his face. He lowered his head. "It's my dereliction of duty." "Dereliction of duty?" Lan Yu said coldly. "Look at what's written here." Guess how much pain CEO Land's face is in? Kevin, tell me how much pain my face is in right now. Kevin lowered his head even more. It's my fault. I'll make it up to you, Boss Lon. What do you have to make up for it? Lon Yu's eyes were full of mockery. Kevin was momentarily speechless. He had been squatting in front of Qin Shen's apartment for 3 days. He had begged several times, but Qin Shen had a heart of stone. However, the more cold-hearted he was, the more Kevin admired him. Lon Yu looked at Kevin's hopeless expression and said indifferently, "Give me her number." Kevin's heart skipped a beat. It's probably for her agent. Even Sister Quan is easier to talk to than her. Lon Yu stared into his eyes. If Sister Quan is so nice, why didn't she manage to convince Qin Shen? Kevin didn't say anything. He just stood to the side with his eyes lowered, looking like a gay man and a gay man. Lon Yu frowned. When did you have such a hobby? After saying that, he stood up and said, "Give me the number before you get off work. Also, don't wear pink shirts in the future." Kevin adjusted his expression and then said, "Boss, don't you think Qin Shen is very aggressive?" Aggressive? Lon Yu made himself a cup of coffee. As he stirred it, he said indifferently, "She's straight." Straight? Kevin looked at his boss. Lon Yu suddenly had the desire to confide in someone. His expression was a little nostalgic. Very soft and soulful. Kevin yearned. "Boss, have you snuck up on her before?" Lon Yu paused for a moment, then smiled. "No, it's not. No, she was still a doctor. She was very strong. I was turned gay." Chapter 29:51. Kevin didn't understand, but he saw deep love in his boss's eyes. Love? The boss loved Qin Shen, and he still loves her? Just as Kevin was thinking, Lon Yu smiled again. It's all in the past. There's nothing to miss. His mother passed away and he went to France. He gave his mother's jewelry to Qin Shen, but she threw it away. She chose Ronglei and chose power. She was now the largest shareholder of the largest biological group in France, and she was as rich as a country. Being a model was just a hobby. Lon Yu's gaze changed slightly. Kevin, on the other hand, looked at his boss and thought to himself, this is the rhythm of love and hate. He quickly got a number and put it on Lon Yu's desk. When he was about to leave, he looked at his boss's coffee machine again. Kevin was familiar with these things, so he blurted out, "This coffee machine costs more than $1 million, right?" Although his boss was rich, he had never seen him so extravagant. Lon Yu lowered his head and murmured, "Surprised? That's because you've never met someone who really knows how to enjoy things." Kevin looked at him. Lon Yu smiled slightly. "It's your goddess, Qin Shen. At that time, I called her Dr. Qin." Doctor? Kevin's heart skipped a beat. His boss liked the temptation of uniforms, but he didn't dare to say anything and quickly left. Lon Yu didn't look at his phone immediately. Instead, he stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the dusk outside. At this moment, he had everything, but he still felt lonely. He stood there until 8 o'clock at night. His secretary came to say goodbye to him, and he moved slightly. He looked at the young secretary and murmured, "Chun-chun." The little secretary, Meng Chun-chun, was stunned. The CEO was calling her by her nickname? The CEO was interested in her? She blushed and said, "CEO Lon, I have a boyfriend." Lon Yu came back to his senses and smiled faintly. His smile was a little bitter. "I'm sorry, I was wrong." After that, he muttered, "You can get off work first." Meng Chun-chun was still a little uneasy, but then she remembered what Kevin had said about Qin Shen. Could it be that the Chun-chun that CEO Lon was referring to was Miss Qin? The little secretary's face reddened even more. She was overthinking things. The door was closed again. Lon Yu suddenly covered his eyes. How much longer would it take for him to completely forget about her, or to treat her as if she didn't exist? She slowly walked to the desk and looked at the note with Qin Shen's phone number on it. She gently picked it up, took the landline, and dialed her number. Qin Shen picked it up quickly. There was a lot of noise on the other side. There were sounds of breathing and music. It sounded like the sound of a man and a woman in love. Lon Yu was stunned. He had thought of many possibilities of what she was doing, but he had never expected it to be like this. He hung up without a second thought. Her originally cold eyes were now filled with pain and sharpness. His eyes had been staring at the phone. but there was no sound. She must be too busy to pay attention to him. There was a fire in his heart, so he dialed again. This time, the phone rang for about 10 seconds before it was picked up. Qin Shen's voice was slightly panting, and her husky voice was very charming. "I'm Qin Shen." Lanyu was stunned for a long time before he said mockingly, "Who has the honor to be Mrs. Rong's guest this time?" On the other side, Qin Shen frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about, Mr. Lan? I'm working out." Lanyu's mood suddenly became extremely good, but also extremely angry and exasperated. Chapter 2952. Lanyu was silent for a long time, and Qin Shen hung up the phone. She didn't care about him. She hated him. Even after she lost her memory, they had slept together once. No, he had forced her to do it with him once. She wasn't satisfied with him, his character, and his skills. Obviously, she didn't take it to heart. Lanyu secretly cursed in his heart. Was it because his skills were too bad? Or was it because he hadn't had sex with a woman for a long time, so he was rusty? He hung up the phone slowly, smoked 2 more cigarettes, and then walked out of the office. Of course, he scanned the slip of paper with her number on it. When he got into the car, Lu Wei called and asked him happily how the preparations for the anniversary were going. Lanyu held the steering wheel with one hand and adjusted his tie with the other. It was prepared by Kevin. "I haven't asked him yet." Lu Wei hesitated for a moment before saying softly, "Lanyu, are all men like this when they lie?" She had tried to say it as easily as possible because she didn't want to quarrel with him. Lanyu looked at the night outside and said calmly, "What do you want to say?" Lu Wei suppressed her anger and asked, "Why did you invite Qin Shen?" "That's the company's decision." Lanyu said calmly, "Lu Wei, I want to have my own space at work, otherwise it will be difficult for us to continue our engagement." Lu Wei was silent for a while before she said in a low voice, "Is it because of me that you can say such words?" Lanyu sighed. "Lu Wei, you're thinking too much." Lu Wei's voice became a little sharp. "If you care about my feelings, you should change your decision." Lanyu narrowed his eyes and said, "Lu Wei, if I were so easily swayed, then Grand Hyatt wouldn't be where it is today." After that, he hung up the phone. It was difficult to communicate with an irrational woman. Compared with Lu Wei, he would rather face Qin Shen's ascetic face. Thinking of this, he remembered the sound of her breathing when she worked out, which couldn't be suppressed at all. Lanyu looked at the dark night outside. His Adam's apple moved slightly before he started the car. He drove the car to Qin Shen's apartment and sat in the car, smoking slowly. When Qin Shen came back, he sat in Zhao Yan's car. Zhao Yan's wife was also in the car, but from Lanyu's direction, he couldn't see her. What he saw was a man and a woman alone, and he immediately thought of the sound of panting. Qin Shen got out of the car. She saw Lanyu, but she did not want to trouble Zhao Yan and his wife, so she said calmly, "Goodbye." Especially Zhao Yan's wife, she gave a special smile. After she got out of the car, Zhao Yan fixed his collar and said to his little wife with dissatisfaction, "Keep your saliva to yourself. Qin Shen is a woman." His little wife complained in a low voice, "But I still remember the Qin Shen from before." Mr. Zhao glanced at his wife and started the car. "Then in your eyes, am I still the same me?" His little wife pursed her lips and said, "You still are. You haven't changed at all. You're an old artist without a sense of humor." "Old artist?" Mr. Zhao expressed his dissatisfaction. He reached out to open his collar again and said in a low voice, "Then when we get home, I'll let you know if I'm an old artist or not." His little wife blushed. She was a woman with an orthodox education. She would blush for a long time if she said a few more words to her husband. Chapter 2953. But today, her calling him an old artist had completely aroused the man's deep-rooted bad habits. He could not wait to go home, find an empty room, and bully his little wife until she cried so that she would take back what she said. Qin Shen stood in the dark and watched Zhao Yan's car drive away. Then, she slowly walked into the lobby. She did not care about the mad dog who was waiting there. However, before she entered the elevator, her hand was caught by someone. She turned her head and saw Lan Yu's angry face. "Are you so hungry that you can't be choosy?" Didn't you say that you and Zhao Yin didn't have a script together? Qin Shun turned his head slowly and looked at the mad dog who had followed her. He frowned and reached out his hand to gently pull Lan Yu down. Countless stars were spinning in front of him. Qin Shun looked down at him and kicked him. It seems that the previous lesson did not make you behave, Co. Lan. Lan Yu said something in a low voice. Qin Shun kicked him a few more times and then stepped on him. When the shoe pressed against his chest, he let out a muffled groan. Qin Shun stepped into the elevator. Just as the elevator door was about to close, a hand suddenly reached in and grabbed her leg. Qin Shun was shocked. He squinted as if a zombie had come back to life. Lan Yu's movements were very fast, and he pounced on her. In an instant, she was pushed to the ground by him. Her arms and legs were twisted. Qin Shun frowned and looked at the man above him. What does Mr. Lan want? I remember that Mr. Lan is getting engaged next week. Do you really want to be in the headlines again? Lan Yu's gaze was deep, and his large hand suddenly moved downwards. Qin Shun was stunned. Then he struggled violently. What do you want? Bastard, let go of me. But he did not let go. Instead, he carefully examined her and finally found a hickey on her collar. Lan Yu was stunned. His expression was very ugly. You let him touch you? Qin Shun was stunned and reached out to touch the place he touched. It was left by him last time. It was such a deep hickey that had yet to disappear. He actually had the nerve to say that she was indecent. It was already good enough that she didn't use this to send him to jail. So she said coldly, Yes, I let him touch me. He's much better than you. The man was furious. How could he listen to such words? He didn't care what his purpose was. He held her face and kissed her. Qin Shun was furious. She raised her leg and kicked him. She kicked his knee, but then he reached out and pressed her leg down. What if I break it? Will it make you comfortable? He said nastily. Qin Shun sneered. Boss Lan, you think too highly of yourself. Boss Lan's level can only make Miss Lu pretend to mock you. The veins on Lan Yu's forehead bulged as he glared at her. I didn't have sex with her. Qin Shun's smile became even colder. So, why are you staring at me, Mr. Lan? If you have eyes, go look for your fiancée. Or, I'll call her for you. She took out her phone and really made the call. It only rang once before he smashed it against the wall of the elevator. However, a phone rang outside the elevator. For Lan Yu, it was a rather familiar sound. Lan Yu turned around slowly. It was Lu Wei. Lu Wei held her phone and looked at the man and woman in the elevator in shock. It was obvious that Lan Yu had forced himself on them. Chapter 2954. Lu Wei was stunned. She looked at the people in the elevator and kept retreating until there was no way to retreat. She pressed her back against the wall and looked at the two people in the elevator. Lan Yu, we're getting engaged, she said softly. You said that you would forget her. You hate her. You don't love her. After saying that, Lu Wei's face was already covered in tears. She looked at the man in front of her with pain in her eyes. Can all forgiveness be taken as indifference? She murmured and stared at them. Lan Yu lowered his head and looked at the woman under him. He slowly got up and said calmly, It was just an accident. Lu Wei's gaze landed on Qin Shun. Qin Shun's expression was even calmer than Lan Yu's. She stood in the elevator and said coldly, Mr. Lan, there won't be a next time. After saying that, she walked out. Before Lu Wei could come back to her senses, Qin Shun took the phone from her hand. She used her cell phone and dialed 110. 110? Someone is raping me here. Lu Wei was stunned. Then, she snatched the phone and glared at Qin Shun. Are you crazy? Compared to her hysteria, Qin Shun appeared to be much calmer. She pulled her clothes and leaned against the wall like an outsider. She looked at Lu Wei and smiled mockingly. What? You can't bear to part with me. Lu Wei narrowed her eyes and looked at her. Qin Shun, don't go too far. Qin Shun smiled even more mockingly. You think that I have an affair with Lan Yu? I want to sue him, but you don't want to. Lu Wei, tell me, as a fiancé, don't you feel pitiful to be so unconditionally humble? Qin Shun sneered. Don't be nervous. I'm dialing an empty number. Lu Wei bit her lip and was about to go crazy. It was an empty account. Qin Shun had tricked her. Qin Shen's gaze swept over Lan Yu, and his tone became even more indifferent. This time, it was an attempted rape. I still have to thank Miss Liu, but last time in the hospital, I left evidence. After saying that, she glanced at the couple, indicating that she didn't want to play with them anymore. Actually, sleeping with Lan Yu once was not a big deal. His skills were not bad, and she also enjoyed it. But a rape was a rape. She still kept the evidence. Maybe it would be useful one day. This was Qin Shen's little dark idea, and now he had successfully fooled Lu Wei. Lu Wei was embarrassed. She silently let Qin Shen leave. When Qin Shen stepped into the elevator, Lan Yu asked softly, "Are you sure it's rape?" Qin Shen narrowed his eyes. Did he think that dying in front of his fiancée was not enough? Then she would send him on his way. So, Qin Shen said softly, "It was rape once. Later on, I took the initiative to cooperate with Boss Lan. Are you satisfied with this answer, Boss Lan and Miss Liu?" Lan Yu's face darkened. Lu Wei's face was pale, although she had long known about it. Knowing it and hearing it from the female lead were two different things. Qin Shen looked at Lu Wei and smiled faintly. "I really admire you for being able to endure such a man." Lu Wei desperately suppressed herself and said slowly, "Qin Shen, I won't fall into your trap. Do you think that if I leave Lan Yu, he will want you?" Qin Shen smiled lightly and ignored her. In the past, she had heard that Lu Wei was very independent and had quite a character. But now it seemed that she was just a poor woman who wanted to marry into a rich family. For Qin Shen, who had always been in a rich family, this kind of feeling could not be understood at all. Chapter 29:55. Qin Shen stood in the elevator and pressed the close button. The elevator door slowly closed in front of Lu Wei and Lan Yu. Lan Yu's face was very ugly as he stared at the door for a long time. Lu Wei said quietly behind him, "Lan Yu, should I reconsider our relationship?" Lan Yu turned his head and looked even calmer than her. He said slowly, "If that's what you want, then do as you please." Lu Wei's voice sounded a little hysterical. "Am I not worth it for you to give up the past? Or is it because the person you're marrying is me, so you're not going to be loyal?" Lan Yu's expression became colder. He didn't say yes, nor did he say no. He just lowered his head, lit a cigarette, and walked out slowly. Lu Wei walked out and followed behind him. Lan Yu leaned against the car door and smoked quietly. He did not pay attention to her. Lu Wei was a little embarrassed. She had seen him with Qin Shen, but he hadn't explained. Her voice was a little shaky. "Don't you care about me?" Lan Yu stroked his forehead with his fingers and let out a long breath. "Lu Wei, I think you're suitable for me, but you're going to do something that's not suitable for me." He looked at her and said, "There won't be a next time. I want to have sex with her again." It wasn't for Lu Wei, but he couldn't accept being so infatuated with a woman he hated. He wanted to get rid of her more than anyone else. There was a touch of expectation in Lu Wei's eyes. "Can you not invite her to the anniversary celebration? June, you can't afford to lose face." His voice was very soft, but his tone was very heavy. He was gentle to Lu Wei, but it didn't mean that he would tolerate her challenging his bottom line. Under her disappointed gaze, Lan Yu said, "I can propose to you on that day." This was probably what women liked the most. He didn't mind making her happier so that she would be more loyal to him in the future. If a man couldn't marry the woman he loved, it would be hard for him to be loyal, but he still hoped that his wife would be loyal to him. Lu Wei looked at the handsome man in front of her in the dark night. Reason told her to reject him, but she couldn't resist such a temptation. She liked him and his power. She had longed to be Mrs. Blue for a long time. Moreover, she knew that apart from the accident with Qin Shen, he didn't have any other women. Lu Wei was still tolerant towards men from rich families. She could tolerate a man's playfulness, but she could not forgive a man's devotion to a woman, especially a woman who was not worse than her in all aspects. Qin Shen had become Lu Wei's imaginary enemy. She looked at Lan Yu and smiled gently. "All right, I believe you." Lan Yu raised his eyes and looked at the apartment building. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. How could some people be forgotten so easily? Just like this penthouse. He had spent the best time with her in there. So how could it be erased so easily? There wouldn't be another woman in this life who could make him love and hate her so much. Lan Yu took the last puff of his cigarette and said to Lu Wei, "Let's go. I'll send you back." Lu Wei nodded, opened the door, and sat in the driver's seat. He hadn't started the car yet. She silently buckled the seat belt and finally summoned up the courage to say, "Come to my place tonight, okay?" Chapter 2956. Lu Wei's face was a little hot. It wasn't that she didn't have experience, but she hadn't done it for a long time after she got together with Lan Yu. She was a little nervous because she was the one who brought it up. She was afraid that he would reject her. As she waited with bated breath, Lan Yu nodded and started the car. He had driven her back a few times, so he knew where she lived. Lu Wei was quite a bourgeois woman, but compared to Qin Chen's extravagance, it wasn't worth mentioning. It was Lan Yu's first time entering her apartment. It wasn't big, about 90 square meters, unlike Qin Chen's 200 square meters. Moreover, Lu Wei's apartment was very warm, and Qin Chen was generous. Even a man wouldn't feel uncomfortable living there. Lan Yu didn't realize that he was subconsciously comparing or finding an excuse to reminisce. He walked to the window, opened the curtains, and smoked quietly while looking out into the night. The night breeze caressed his face, making it a little hot. Lu Wei turned on the air conditioner and made a cup of coffee. She said softly, "I heard from Kevin that you like coffee. Try mine." Lan Yu held a cigarette in one hand and the coffee in the other. He frowned after taking a sniff. "What's wrong? Isn't it to your taste?" Lu Wei said worriedly. Lan Yu's voice was a little light. "No, I'm just used to making coffee, and it's not suitable for someone else to make it." Lu Wei also picked up a cup and sipped it lightly, filtering out the meaning in his words. Lan Yu probably didn't know what he really thought. It wasn't just coffee. It was just to adapt to his own life. He probably wanted to live alone. To him, she was just a springboard to get rid of the pain of the past. But she was willing to be the springboard. She was willing, so she fought for it. Lu Wei was extremely beautiful. When she returned home, she let down her long hair and put on her slippers, which made her look even more gentle. She looked at the man in front of her and was a little nervous. "I don't know if you can wear the bathrobe here." Lan Yu tilted his head and thought for a moment. "If it's not convenient, I'll go back." "No." Lu Wei suddenly hugged him and pressed her face against his chest. She murmured, "Lan Yu, it wasn't easy for us to get to this point. I don't want to let you go." She looked up at him. "I want to be with you for real. We're engaged. We don't have to live together, but we can stay for a night once in a while, can't we? This is what a couple should be like." He looked at Lu Wei's anxious expression and listened to her words. In a trance, he felt that he had said these words himself. Who was he talking to? That heartless woman. Lan Yu's eyes were stained with a layer of gloominess. He pressed out the cigarette and said, "Take a shower first." Lu Wei blushed. "Aren't you coming?" "No." Lan Yu's voice was a little hoarse. "I'll sleep on the sofa." He didn't intend to take a shower here. Since he didn't have a bathrobe, it was fine if it was inconvenient. He was planning to get engaged to Lu Wei, but he couldn't just do whatever he wanted to when it came to the physiology of men and women. Facing such a beautiful Lu Wei, he didn't have any urgent desires. He might even hug and kiss her, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to force himself to do it. Chapter 2957. Next time, he smiled and rubbed his neck. "I'm a bit tired." Lu Wei wanted to say something, but she didn't. She still had the last bit of restraint as a woman. When a man told you he was tired and didn't want to do it, you couldn't force him to do it, right? She chose to be considerate. There was also the intentional or unintentional seduction. She nodded, got him a blanket, and settled him down before going to the master bedroom to take a shower. When she came out, it was already 20 minutes later. Lu Wei came out in only a bathrobe and walked into the living room, wiping her wet hair. Lan Yu was reading the news on his phone. She squatted down beside him and murmured, "What are you looking at, Lan Yu?" "Nothing." He calmly put away his phone and glanced at her. From his point of view, he could admire his beautiful fiancée's assets, but he calmly withdrew his gaze. Lu Wei put the towel aside, held his head in her hands, and kissed him lightly on the face. Lan Yu didn't reject her. It wasn't because he couldn't resist the temptation. but because their relationship couldn't. "Want you, I want you." Lu Wei's voice trembled as she kissed him. Then, she kissed his thin lips. It was the first time she had tasted it. His kiss was gentle, not rough, and he gently pulled her over and placed her on top of his body. The temperature of the man and woman merged. His shirt was unbuttoned, and her sexy pajamas slid down to her shoulders. The heat was ignited. Lan Yu turned around and trapped the woman under him. He could have it if he wanted. She was his fiancée anyway. He wouldn't be a man if he didn't feel anything when such a woman was lying under him. His movements became wild, almost frantic as he bit her neck. Lu Wei was naturally aroused. However, as Lan Yu kissed her, he stopped. Then, his expression became indescribably strange. Lu Wei wasn't a little girl anymore, and she realized why he didn't continue. They had been hugging and nibbling for a long time, but he didn't have any reaction at all. Lu Wei felt a little hurt. She was one of the top 5 supermodels in the world. She had a good figure and a pretty face, but he actually couldn't get over her. She was in a daze, and her clothes were still messy. Lan Yu adjusted her clothes slowly and said hoarsely, "Next time, as a considerate fiancé, no matter if your man is really incapable or pretending to be incapable, you have to find a reason for him." Lu Wei said in a low voice, "Lan Yu, you're too tired." She pretended not to care and pressed him to lie down. "I'm going to make you a midnight snack. You probably haven't had dinner yet." Lan Yu suddenly asked, "Is there seafood here?" Lu Wei was taken aback. After a moment, she said in a low voice, "Yes, but it's dry goods. Let me make a portion of paella for you." Lan Yu smiled. Lu Wei looked at his face. She had never seen him smile so sincerely, so she suppressed the fact that she was allergic to seafood and squeezed out a smile. "Okay, I haven't eaten anything you cook." Lan Yu got up and went to the kitchen to take out the ingredients. He could tell at a glance that Lu Wei was the kind of woman who didn't know how to cook. Men would come here and pretend that they often went to the kitchen, but she actually didn't know how to cook. However, he didn't care too much because Qinshin didn't know how to cook either. Lan Yu was cutting to shreds, lost in thought, and his fingers started to bleed. Lu Wei exclaimed, "Don't move, I'll bandage it for you." She said it was bandaging, but she put her finger in her mouth and gently sucked. She was tall and docile, and at that moment, she actually looked like a person. It was late at night again. Lan Yu's voice was a little hoarse. "Chun Chun." Chapter 2958. Lu Wei's movements slowed down, and she stared at him with a deep gaze. She let go of his fingers and said absent-mindedly, "Lan Yu, you called the wrong person just now. Do you know that?" Lan Yu came back to his senses. He stared at the woman in front of him. Just now, he had tried to take off her clothes and fight with her, and he had failed. He said that he was too tired, and she was understanding. But only he knew that it was because he didn't want it, just like he and Lin Cece back then. If he didn't want it, he didn't want it. And if he didn't want it, he didn't want it at all. In the end, he said lightly, "Lu Wei, let's forget it." He didn't want to force himself to hug a woman he didn't want to hug. It wasn't because Qinshin was back, but because he could already see the future between him and Lu Wei. A marriage could be without love, but it couldn't be without sex. How could a woman he didn't even want to hug be the one he wanted? How could she be the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with? Under Lu Wei's shocked gaze, he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I'll give you appropriate compensation. You can unilaterally announce that you want to break up. There's no limit to the reason." Lu Wei's tears fell. "But I don't want compensation." Men always had some tender feelings for women who were crying like pear blossoms in the rain, not to mention that he had let her down first. So he said in a low voice, "But what I can give you now is compensation." Lu Wei took a step back and looked at him in disbelief. "You still want to be with her? She's married, and she even has a child. You still want her?" Lan Yu was a little upset, and his face slowly turned cold. "Our business has nothing to do with her. How is it not related?" Lu Wei smiled gently. "You weren't like this before. Although you were cold, you would never treat me like this." She murmured, "But she's back, and everything is different. You only have her in your eyes, and you can't do anything to me even if I strip naked in front of you. I believe you when you say you're tired, but you—" Lu Wei wiped her tears. Tell me, have you always treated me as Qin Shen's substitute? No, Lan Yu said firmly. Lu Wei's eyes lit up at first, then dimmed. She sneered, of course not. Given her position in your heart, how can you compare her with other women? Lan Yu's gaze turned completely cold, as if that little bit of gentleness from before had never existed. Yes, he had never loved her. No, he had never liked her. Lu Wei laughed at herself. When you think it through, contact my secretary and we can talk about compensation, he said briefly, and then went to change clothes, ready to leave. Without a trace of reluctance, he walked out in a straight line. When he grabbed the door handle, Lu Wei forcefully threw the ingredients he used to cook at him and said hysterically, "Paella is also Qin Shen's favorite, right? Lan Yu, you bastard." Lan Yu's back was miserable. He paused, but did not turn around. He didn't say that perhaps she had shown this side of her in the past, and he might have treated her as a substitute. However, a substitute was a substitute, and he would never fall in love with her. Lan Yu went downstairs. When he got into his car, he frowned at the smell of onions on him. However, he didn't start the car immediately. He just sat in the car and smoked. He thought of Lu Wei's words, and then smiled faintly. Chapter 2959. Qin Shen had read about Lu Wei and Lan Yu's breakup in the newspaper. She was a little surprised. From her point of view that night, Lu Wei liked Lan Yu's power and money more than Lan Yu himself. She didn't think that Lu Wei would break off the engagement with Lan Yu because of what happened that night. So the only one who would bring it up would be Lan Yu. In Qin Shen's heart, Lan Yu had no integrity and had crossed the bottom line. At that moment, she was sitting in King Entertainment's private office. Sister Quan was sitting next to her, so Qin Shen didn't hear what she said. Sister Quan had taken care of Qin Shen's mother, Yilianqiu. Qin Shen treated her like an auntie. Sister Quan was also close to her and would scold her when she was unhappy. Like now, she wrote a string of numbers for Qin Shen to see. How many zeros are there? Qin Shen was not interested. 100 million. Sister Quan's voice was very high. And that's after tax. How many famous models do you think are worth that much? For the sake of the evil money, Sister Quan put down her pride and tried her best to persuade him. Think about it. If you don't take this and that, Sister Quan will have nothing to eat. Qin Shen seemed to be impervious to everything. Sister Quan played the family card. I don't have many years left, and I'm still busy working for you. Can't you save some money for me and take this job? Qin Shen picked up the piece of paper and said softly, "The commission is about 12 million. I'll write a check." Sister Quan was sad. Have I reached the point of relying on connections and going through the back door? It looks like King Entertainment doesn't need me anymore. Qin Shen was a little amused. Sister Quan, don't give me that. Sister Quan slowly became serious. She looked at Qin Shen and said, "You are currently on the rise in your career, so you need these identities to improve yourself. Lu Wei is your biggest rival. If you defeat her, you will be Asia's top model." Qin Shen sighed softly. I heard that Lu Wei broke up with Lan Yu and got 1 billion yuan. Sister Quan, do you think I should seduce him first before breaking up with him? That way, I'll still get 1 billion yuan to show my filial piety to you. Sister Quan scoffed. Do you really need to do this with your status? At this moment, the door opened. The current CEO of King Entertainment, Qin Mo, personally came over. He coughed lightly and said, "Qin Shen, come to my office." Qin Shen looked at Sister Quan and mouthed, "I know you betrayed me." She knew in her heart that it was probably because of Jun Yu again. However, she didn't expect to see Lan Yu in Qin Mo's office. Qin Shen's gaze paused on him, then looked at Qin Mo and said calmly, "Since CEO Lan is here, I'll talk to him directly." Qin Mo was also in a difficult position. He rubbed his nose and said, "All right, you guys talk." With that, he closed the door for them. Qin Shen walked over to the sofa and sat down, facing Lan Yu. She looked at the man in front of her and smiled lightly. I thought Mr. Lan would be in a bad mood recently. I didn't expect to see him running around for work in the company. Lan Yu narrowed his eyes and stared at the woman in front of him. Are you gloating? It's obvious, isn't it? Qin Shen smiled and took the contract in front of him. He looked at it and said, 100 million? Miss Chin, do you think it's too little? He showed his businessman nature. Miss Chin has just entered the top 10 of the world's top models. I don't think her value is that high. Chin Chun flipped his brown curly hair. It was just a casual action, but it was very seductive. Chapter 2960. Lan Yu found that he couldn't refuse such a temptation at once. His Adam's apple gently rolled a few times, and a certain sense of tension rose in an instant. He wanted her. Even if he hated her, he still wanted her strongly. In fact, he had done it with her several times not long ago, but it was far from quenching his thirst. He hadn't had a woman for several years, and once he touched her, he couldn't extricate himself. He hated himself and tried to ignore this feeling. After Chin Chun finished flipping her hair, her eyes fell on him, and she chuckled. The price is the price. Everything depends on whether I want to or not. Lan Yu narrowed his eyes. Miss Chin, you mean you want to raise the price? Chin Chun smiled slightly. 200 million. We can't talk about it if it's less. She flipped her hair again. You know I don't lack money. I'm just interested. Interested? Lan Yu sneered. Isn't your interest to play tricks on people with a scalpel? Why, you can't find fun in the hospital, so you join the entertainment circle to find a man. Who is your target this time? Chin Chun smiled coldly than him. Boss Lan, are you angry at me because you lost your marriage? You can take it as. Lan Yu's eyes fell on her face for a long time. Even he didn't know whether it was nostalgia or hatred. Chin Chun lowered her eyes and sighed. If I were you, I wouldn't entangle with each other anymore. Lan Yu, she called his name. She hadn't called him like this since she came back and she lost her memory. Isn't it good to start a new life? It's better to have the present than to live in the past. She was calm and rational, the perfect goddess today, not the Chin Chun of the past. The Chin Chun who wore men's clothes and had a sharp mouth but a soft heart. Lan Yu laughed, and his laughter was a little desolate. You care about me. You actually care about me. Chin Chun, this is the funniest joke of the year. Chin Chun looked at him. I don't want to remember. Lan Yu, don't try to awaken my memories. If you hate me, then go ahead and hate me. Anyway, I don't feel any pain. You're the only one who feels pain. Lan Yu's expression finally changed completely. She had amnesia, but her intuition was as accurate as the scalpel she had always held in her hand. Lan Yu looked at her and chuckled. Yes, I'm the only one in pain. If you don't want to remember, then do you know how I've been living all these years? I don't want to know. Chin Chun's voice was very cold. Lan Yu, you hate me, and I don't want to know why. To me, you're just a stranger. It's not worth it to give up my marriage for a stranger. I think it's not too late to take it back now. You want to discuss personal matters with me? Miss Chin, I remember that I'm here to talk to you about the contract. Lan Yu's voice was a little hoarse and displeased. Chin Chun lowered his eyes and looked up after a moment. Because in President Lan's eyes, there are personal emotions written all the time. I probably can't do business with you, so I might as well not cooperate with you. She wanted to get up, but he grabbed her hand and pressed her back on the sofa. Then let's talk about personal matters. His whole body trapped her as she could smell the burning masculine scent on his body. Chin Chun's eyes were slightly cold. Let go. This time, he was smart and directly pressed his knee against her. If she dared to move, he would directly rub against her. Chapter 2961. His reply was to push his knee in again, which earned a grunt from her. This shameless man. Shameless. Why aren't you moaning? He sneered. As for why I broke up with her, don't you know? Chin Chun scoffed. CEO Lan, you're the one who cheated on her. Don't push the blame to me. Lan Yu narrowed his eyes. Is that so? Then let's see if I forced you or if Mrs. Rome enjoyed it too. With that said, he took out a phone from his pocket and switched it to a certain function. Chin Chun's expression changed. I'll give you two choices. One is to sign the contract, and the other is to have sex. I'll record it, but I can't guarantee that your fans won't be able to see it. Moreover, I can't guarantee that Lu Wei's fans won't be able to see it. It might trigger their nerves and cause harm to Mrs. Rome. He said shamelessly. Chin Chun glared at him. Despicable. You used to like how despicable I was. Lan Yu's voice was hoarse. Seems like you've chosen the second option. He wanted to kiss her, but Qin Shin turned his face away and said coldly, Lan Yu, you're obviously looking for an excuse. Perhaps, Lan Yu said in a self-mocking manner before biting her neck. Qin Shun said almost immediately, I'll sign it. She didn't want to be involved in a scandal with Lan Yu, nor did she want to get involved with his ex-fiancée. Sometimes, when fans went crazy, they could tear you apart. She pushed Lan Yu away, took the contract expressionlessly, and signed her name on it. Her voice was cold. CEO Lan, this is the only time. With that said, she walked out. Lan Yu was still sitting there, his hand caressing his lips. There was still her taste there, but she only had disgust for him. He laughed coldly and self-mockingly. Disgust. He was the one who hated her. So what if she disgusted him? Why? Why did he still care? Why didn't he forget about her like she had said? Why didn't he just find a woman to marry? Why did he break up with Lu Wei the moment she came back after spending so much time with her for so long? Everything was because he had not given up on this woman. Love and hate. Love to the bones. Hate to the depths of the soul. The office door opened again, and Qin Mo walked back in. His hand was pressed against his forehead, where there was a panda eye from his beloved sister. Qin Mo coughed lightly. You've killed me, Lan Yu. Look at my eyes. When have they ever been so miserable? Ever since he was young. Only Qin Shun dared to make a move on him. Lan Yu looked over and didn't say anything. He just took the phone and looked at it. Although it was only a few seconds, it still captured the image of him kissing her neck. It was quite a beautiful photo. Lan Yu thought about it and didn't delete it. He put away the phone and looked at Qin Mo. Qin Mo sat down and complained, Shouldn't you give me some compensation for mental damage? Lan Yu smiled faintly. That's your family business. With that said, he got up and left. Qin Mo's voice came from behind. Lu Wei looked for me. Lan Yu paused and turned back. Qin Mo smiled. A woman like her won't be too sad. All right, I'm saying this so that you don't feel too guilty. Lu Wei looked for him because he wasn't married and didn't have a girlfriend. But there was someone in his heart, but they might never have a chance. Chapter 2962. Lan Yu smiled. I won't feel guilty, because he no longer had a heart. He had long given up on women, whether it was Qin Shun or Lu Wei. Qin Mo was relieved to see him like this. He leaned back on the sofa and looked up at the ceiling. He rubbed his aching eyes and thought of Yi Huan. He didn't know how he and Yi Huan got to where they were today. No, I didn't get to the end. They just became unrelated. Qin Mo only felt a little sad and then got to work. The men of the Qin family had a hard life. Even though he had the majority of the shares in King Entertainment, Qin Shun, Qin Mu, and a little girl all had shares. He was the only one who worked hard, but there were many who were lucky. However, who asked him to be surnamed Qin? Who asked him to love these little ones? Besides, they were all so happy. He was the only one who didn't even have time to find a woman. Just as Qin Mo was complaining, Lan Yu walked out and unexpectedly met Qin Shun at the elevator. She was leaning there as if waiting for him. He smiled faintly and walked over slowly. She stretched out her long and beautiful hand. Take out your phone. She had forgotten that he had already taken a video. It wouldn't do her any good if it was leaked. And the location was thought-provoking too. Lan Yu looked at her and smiled faintly as he placed the phone in her hand. He said mockingly, I thought Mrs. Rome didn't care about this. After all, Mr. Rome isn't here anymore. Mrs. Rome just has some physical needs. It's not a big deal to find a man. Qin Shin didn't care about his weird tone. This man probably had menopause early because he wasn't satisfied. She really couldn't figure out. With Lu Wei's looks and figure, he could do whatever he wanted. Why did he have to make himself like this? Dissatisfied, Qin Shin smiled coldly and swiped the phone. Password. Lan Yu felt a little awkward. He leaned against the wall and lit a cigarette. He took 2 slow puffs. Forgot. How would I know? Qin Shin looked at him. Lan Yu looked back. Come here, and I'll tell you. Qin Shin thought he was bored, but he still walked over. As soon as she got there, Lan Yu blew a ring of smoke on her face. Qin Shin was going crazy. Wasn't he the CEO of a multinational company? How could he be so shameless? Just as she was about to lose her temper, he said, "It's your birthday." Qin was stunned. His password was her birthday? Lan Yu looked at her surprised expression, and his posture became even more languid. "What? You don't even remember your own birthday?" Qin pursed his lips, looked at him, and lowered his head to untie it. At this moment, he puffed out another mouthful of smoke. She was so angry that she took a step back, unlocked the password on her phone, and opened the photo album to find that paragraph. There were very few photos in his phone, and there was only one on TV. Qin deleted it without looking at it. She didn't want to see this kind of thing. Just as she was about to exit, Qin saw a long photo. The person in the photo looked a little familiar. She opened it. Then she was stunned. It was herself, but it was another unfamiliar version of herself. She had short hair and was wearing a black shirt. She was sitting on the piano with her legs bare. The shirt was only buttoned twice. It was very sexy, and she was sure that it was not her size. Chapter 2963. She must have done it with a man, and the photo was in Lan Yu's phone. He knew who it was without a doubt. She was stunned and didn't say anything for a long time. Lan Yu's expression changed slightly. He snatched the phone from her and said, "Mrs. Rong deleted it, right?" Qin looked at the phone in his hand and said, "But there's a photo of me in it." Lan Yu lowered his head and looked at the photo. He smiled bitterly and muttered, "No, this isn't you. This is my ex-girlfriend." He looked up at her beautiful face and said, "No, it's not you." Because in his heart, Qin was dead. His love was also dead. He used to hate her when she dressed up as a man, but now he missed it. He missed it and hated it. His face became extremely cold. It wasn't because he was abstinent, but because he was going through menopause. His mood was uncertain. Qin looked at him and was touched. She knew that she had had a relationship with the man in front of her. She was a casual person. Since she had forgotten, since they had separated, since she was married, and since he had a girlfriend, it meant that they didn't love each other so much. She had never thought that she would find the memory of her and him again. But now, for the first time, she saw their past. He wasn't in the photo, but she could feel that she was loved at that time. And at that time, she loved him. Qin looked down and didn't know what to say. In the end, he just murmured, "Did I let you down?" "No, Mrs. Rong. Don't think too much." His attitude was very cold. "No one let anyone down. We have nothing to do with each other." He then deleted the photo in front of her. "It's not that I can't bear part with you. I just forgot." Qin looked at him and smiled. Mr. Lan's memory isn't very good. Lan Yu didn't say anything else and walked into the elevator. When he turned around, his eyes met Qin's. She still didn't feel anything, but he was full of pain. Suddenly, he was furious. While he struggled in pain, she lived without worry, and she faced him confidently. The elevator door was about to close, but he pulled it open and walked straight over. That aura was very strong, and it gave off a feeling that it could destroy heaven and earth. Qin narrowed his eyes and instinctively wanted to escape. At that moment, she forgot that she had practiced karate. She only knew that this man was crazy. This was King Entertainment headquarters. What was he trying to do? Just as Qin retreated, Lan Yu had already leaned over. He cupped her face with both hands and kissed her. He pressed his body against hers and pushed her forward. She stumbled against the wall, the back of her head aching, but he did not stop kissing her. When she struggled, he pressed her harder and bit her lip in a punishing way. She bit down fiercely, and her lips were so soft and tender that they bled in an instant. They both tasted blood. The man was like a raging beast, and the animal in his blood was completely ignited. He kissed her cheeks and chin, and then kissed her lips. His voice was very low. "Mrs. Rong, I don't believe that you don't want a man after Rong lay passed away for so long." With that, he reached out a hand. Qin gasped. He was crazy. They were on the top floor of King Entertainment, just outside Qin Mo's office. The secretary and assistant could come at any time. Chapter 2964. Just as Qin was thinking, Qin Mo really came out with a stack of documents in his hand. He was tongue-tied as he looked at the entangled man and woman. In fact, this kind of thing was normal. It wasn't like Chin Mo hadn't seen a bigger scene, but this woman was his precious sister. This wasn't good. He sighed and said very gently, "If you really need it, you can go to Qin Shen's office. It's very private there." There was restraint in his voice. "Here, it's not good. Lan Yu, you can't use it." His tone became very relaxed. "Look, your forehead is covered in sweat. This is not good for men." After saying that, Qin Mo walked into the elevator and gave his sister an encouraging look. Actually, it was nothing to find a man to solve the problem after losing her husband. Besides, this man was Lan Yu. Well, there was nothing bad about it. He had looks and a figure. It should be good in that aspect. There weren't many men who kept their chastity these days. The elevator closed. Qin Shen stared straight at him. He couldn't believe that he left just like that. He didn't care about her. Lan Yu also calmed down at this time and looked at her. "You beat him up like this, and he will still help you?" Qin Shen pulled up his clothes and glared at him. "President Lan, you don't have to think too much. But if President Lan dares to do this again, I don't mind suing you." She looked up at a probe in front of her. "There are surveillance cameras here." Lan Yu was stunned at first, then he chuckled. "You mean we kissed and even touched some of your private parts, and people in the security room saw it?" Qin Shen's face darkened. She hadn't thought about that. She entered the elevator almost immediately and pressed the button for the security room floor. Lan Yu didn't go. He was sure that she wouldn't sue because she was a public figure and he was a man who had just broken off their engagement. She wouldn't be so stupid. He left directly. When Qin Shen went to the security room, the security guards all looked at her and looked at each other. The scene between Miss Qin and President Lan was too exciting. Some people couldn't wait to post it on their WeChat moments. It was too late for Qin Shen to come over now. Qin Mo also came over, but no matter how good his PR was, he couldn't stop the video from spreading like wildfire. Lu Wei wasn't easy to deal with either. She even specially held a press conference. She didn't dare to say it out loud, but she secretly accused Qin Shen of stealing Lan Yu, causing her to break up with Lan Yu. Qin Shen was in a dilemma. The security guards were all fired, but that didn't solve Qin Shen's crisis. Lan Yu was a businessman. It didn't matter if he had a bad reputation, but he couldn't have such a scandal in the fashion industry. There was still a week before the anniversary celebration. Not only did the matter not die down, it became more and more serious, and it even involved Grand Hyatt's shares. Lu Wei's move was a double whammy. As the biggest boss of King Entertainment, Qin Mo had no choice but to deal with this matter. Of course, he called Lan Yu to complain. "I told you, if you can't help it, you could get a room, even if it's Qin Shen's office. How did you know to do that to her in her office last time?" Even if there were groundless accusations, there wasn't any actual evidence. Now he had to work for him. Thinking of Lu Wei's motive, Qin Mo wasn't in a good mood. Chapter 2965. Qin Mo asked Lu Wei out alone. In the restaurant where the atmosphere was better, young Master Qin was dealing with the beauty elegantly. After the meal, he drank his wine and asked elegantly, "Lu Wei, you can actually state your conditions. It's not good for both sides to suffer. You also know that Qin Shen doesn't count on this job to support her family." Lu Wei pursed her lips and smiled. "Since you don't care, you shouldn't care about what happened this time either." Qin Mo's eyes were unhappy as he said slowly, "You should know that what happened between you and Lan Yu has nothing to do with Qin Shen. She lost her memory and has forgotten everything. Yes, it's Lan Yu who keeps pestering me. But even so, I'm still unhappy." Lu Wei chuckled lightly. Qin Mo had lost his patience with the woman in front of him. He took a sip of the wine and said, "State your conditions." But Lu Wei was still playing tricks. "I heard that President Qin doesn't have a girlfriend yet." Qin Mo smiled faintly. "Miss Lu is ambitious, but I'm not sure if you've heard of this saying." Lu Wei chuckled. "President Qin, please speak." Qin Mo had already stood up and said slowly, "Your heart is higher than the sky, but your life is thinner than paper." With that, he walked out. Seriously, what kind of taste did Lan Yu have? This woman was so utilitarian that she actually wanted to be Lady Qin. How could he marry a woman who didn't treat his sister well? Qin Mo left, and Lu Wei sat there angrily. In terms of looks and net worth, marrying into the Qin family wasn't considered climbing up the social ladder. But Qin Mo looked at her as though she was a lowly creature. She couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept it at all. But what could she do even if she couldn't accept it? What Lu Wei didn't know was that the Qin family owned King Entertainment. Women in the entertainment and fashion industries were just like toys to them. Only true love could be married. For example, Qin Anlin and Yi Lianqiu. Lu Wei was nothing. When Qin Mo walked out, he was in a bad mood. He brushed off his custom-made trousers, opened the car door, and got into the car. Sitting in the car, he didn't drive away immediately. Instead, he called Lan Yu. The negotiation failed. You deal with it yourself. Lan Yu snorted lightly. Qin Mo said with some ill intentions, you know that Qin Shen isn't waiting for this income. Your company's image is the most important. After saying that, his mood became much better. He hung up the phone and thought to himself, am I, Qin Mo, the kind of person who takes over someone else's leftovers? Even though Lan Yu had never touched Lu Wei did not know how many times she had been through. He wasn't interested. Back then, Lan Yu had even prepared to get engaged. Sure enough, these rich and overbearing businessmen were easy to deceive. Qin Mo thought in a somewhat unkind way. Then, he lit a cigarette and couldn't help but think of his childhood sweetheart. He Huan. He remembered her first time. He Huan was very petite. She had inherited her figure from Annie Su Cheng. She was so small, she wasn't even 160 centimeters. And he was 185 centimeters. When she stood in front of him, she only reached his upper arm. He could even clearly remember their first time. It was really a disaster, because the difference in size was too big. That time, it was a misfire after drinking, and it happened in the car. She cried so hard that he couldn't coax her for a long time. In the end, he just let go and did it. Before her, he had had women before. He wasn't experienced, but he wasn't a novice either. Chapter 2966. Of course, all his tricks were realized with Yi Huan. Moreover, after having her, he had no one else. But they still broke up. Just now, Lu Wei said that he was single. How could he be single? His spouse's name was Yi Huan. It was just that his Huan ignored him. She was a movie fan. She was an Oscar Best Director. B-City couldn't accommodate her. The night she said she was going to leave, he was furious. But in the end, he didn't make her stay. She carried a small bag and left. Until now, he still didn't know why she had to leave him. Of course, he didn't agree to the divorce. He said that as long as he was alive, she would be Mrs. Qin. That heartless little bastard left for 3 years. It had been 3 years, and she had filmed 2 amazing films. The male leads of the films were all foreign handsome men. They were the melancholy princes that she admired, not a profiteer businessman like him. She must have had a lot of fun among the flowers. A hint of pain flashed through Qin Mo's eyes. He swiped his phone and found her photo. He hated her in his heart, but he didn't know how to be angry with her. His story with Yi Huan was different from that of Lan Yu and Shen Shen. There didn't seem to be such a strong love and hate. He was in B-City, and she was in New York. She would occasionally come back to visit Uncle Keim and Annie Su Cheng, and he would also go to have a meal with them. After all, they were still husband and wife in name. But she didn't sleep with him once. Even if he wanted to die, he proudly didn't mention it. When she said that she was leaving, it was probably a breakup. He wasn't low enough to beg her for a biological jade. Sometimes, when he couldn't take it anymore, he also thought that life was short. Why should he stay chaste for such a cruel little thing? After 3 years, he slowly realized that she wasn't going to come back. She had decided, but he hadn't decided what to do. Should he continue to wait, give up, or catch her back? Qin Mo was a patient man, but the most patient thing he had done in his life was waiting for Yi Huan. In the past, he waited for her to grow up. Now, he waited for her to come back. Qin Mo smiled bitterly, put away his phone, and started the car. When he said those words to Lan Yu, he originally thought that Lan Yu would think of a way, but he didn't expect that Lan Yu's solution was to make an official announcement. CEO Lan and Qin had rekindled their old love and were really together. In fact, the official photo was of Qin sitting on the piano. As a private photo, it was a little big, but since Qin was a model, it wasn't surprising. Of course, that photo also directly proved that Lan Yu and Qin used to be in a relationship. There were even netizens who dug out the oil painting from that year. For a time, there was a lot of discussion. When King Entertainment's PR department received this news, they were dumbfounded. They immediately called young Master Qin. What should they do? Now that Grand Yu had announced their relationship, if they denied it, wouldn't it become a dog-eat-dog situation? This was exactly what Lu Wei wanted, wasn't it? Young Master Qin's expression was very gentle when he received the call. I'm not the one who has a scandal with Lan Yu. Tell the female lead the news and let her decide. The PR manager swallowed hard. Was President Qin not going to care? Or was there another conspiracy? But he had to listen to President Qin, so he immediately called Qin and stammered out the situation. Chapter 2967. The PR manager called Qin and said, President Lan announced their relationship unilaterally. What do you think we should do? If we are going to deny it and slap President Lan in the face, our PR department will also cooperate. Qin just said lightly, got it. Then she hung up. The PR manager was a little puzzled. Logically speaking, Qin's temper wasn't so good. She was humiliated by the man at the door of the president's office, and now they were rumored to be together. Miss Qin actually endured it. As soon as the PR manager hung up, Qin called again and said lightly, Inform Grand Hyatt that my appearance fee is 500 million yuan, or I won't show up at the anniversary celebration. The PR manager swallowed hard. 500 million yuan. He narrowed his eyes and didn't want to rob them, but he soon came to his senses. He and Miss Qin were on the same side, so he should let Grand Hyatt pay 500 million yuan. Who asked them to spread rumors? The PR manager called Grand Hyatt confidently and shamelessly. Of course, the PR department over there didn't have the right to directly agree, so the phone went to Lan Yu. Lan Yu answered the phone and thought for a moment. Okay, but let Miss Qin come here to sign the contract again. The PR manager then told Qin. Qin went to Grand Hyatt 2 days later. It was her first time there, but when she stepped on the elevator, she felt a sense of familiarity, especially when she put her hand flat on the wooden door of the president's office. A picture flashed through her mind. The man and the woman were entangled like snakes, unwilling to part from each other. She was sweating and panting. Qin shook her head, trying to get rid of the image in her mind, but it was very difficult. And that face belonged to Lan Yu. Qin gasped and put down her hand from the door. She felt that the past between her and Lan Yu was not so simple. The image was so real that it didn't seem to be imagination. She could even remember the furnishings in his office when she closed her eyes. She was sure that it wasn't her first time here. At least before she lost her memory, she had been here, and that memory was something she didn't want to touch. Just as Qin was about to leave, the door opened from the inside. Lan Yu stood at the door and looked at her quietly. Why don't you go in since you're here? Today, he was wearing a classic shirt and suit, looking very handsome and very serious. It was very different from the image in her mind. She looked at the office behind him. It was exactly the same. The furnishings were exactly the same. So the image in her head was real. He once had sex with a woman in the office, or rather fooled around, and she saw it. Qin was repulsed by his office. He took a step back and said, President Lan, let's talk in a reception room. Lan Yu turned sideways to let her see inside. His tone was businesslike and cold. If Miss Qin thinks there's something strange in my office, you can check it. If you're worried and think I'm going to molest you, I'll ask my secretary to come over. He paused. I won't be so perverted as to do anything to Miss Qin in front of the secretary, will I? Qin snorted. Who knows? Even if I don't care about Miss Qin's international influence, I have to care about the Qin family and the Rong family, right? Lan Yu said gently and motioned her to come in. Chapter 2968. Qin walked in and sat down on the sofa. She realized that he called her Miss Cheen instead of Mrs. Rome today. This meant that he was doing business. If he was irrational, he would call her Mrs. Rome mockingly. Cheen sat down and looked at him. Mr. Lon called me here because he agreed to the appearance fee of 500 million yuan. Lon Yu didn't answer her directly. Instead, he went to the water dispenser and poured a cup of fruit tea for her before handing it to her. He didn't sit down. Instead, he placed his hands on the back of the sofa on both sides of her body and leaned over. Cheen leaned back. CEO Lon said it wouldn't be a big deal. His posture was impeccable. His elbows were bent and his body was leaning forward, almost touching her face. Miss Cheen, you've been in the fashion industry for so long. You shouldn't be so naive as to believe a man's words. His voice was hoarse and low, but he quickly left her body and sat opposite her. Look at the contract. If there's no problem, sign it directly. I'm also very busy. As soon as he left, Cheen let out a sigh of relief. She gritted her teeth. Mr. Lon, don't you think you're crazy? Lon Yu chuckled and reached out to take the tea from her hand. She didn't want to drink it anyway, so she might as well let him drink it. He sipped the tea and said mockingly, when I approached you just now, your heart rate increased from 72 beats per minute to more than 80. Mrs. Rome yearns for a man? Mrs. Rome. Cheen closed the contract. I'm not going to sign it. Then fulfill the previous contract. Lon Yu put the cup down heavily and looked at her indifferently. Cheen, if I'm a man that you can abandon whenever you want, then Grand Hyatt isn't a place that you can come and go as you please. You can't go back on your word after signing the contract. Cheen stood up. What do you want? Lon Yu was still sitting with his long legs crossed. His eyes were filled with interest. Are you angry? Are you angry? The Cheen family's little princess really doesn't know how to conceal herself in the workplace. In the past, when she was a doctor, she gave in to everyone. Now, she's still the same. Should I say your life? Cheen mimicked his mean look and sneered. I don't talk to men with endocrine disorders. As for the compensation in the contract, she said somewhat roguishly, go find Cheen Mo. He asked me to look for you. Lon Yu's expression did not change. He said that his sister is not in the company, only the employees. Of course, Miss Cheen can still make a fuss in private. As he spoke, he tossed another contract over. It clearly states that if Miss Cheen breaches the contract, you'll have to pay a penalty of 300 million yuan. Cheen snorted. Why don't you just rob someone? I learned it from Miss Cheen. Miss Cheen's asking price is 250 million yuan, so there's nothing wrong with the penalty. Isn't it? Lon Yu stared at her with a ruthless look in his eyes. Cheen, since she mixed in the fashion industry, everything was handled by Sister Quan. This was the first time for Lon Yu. Because Cheen Mo sent Sister Quan away, she had no one else to pick up the contract, so she had to do it herself. Seeing him like this, she felt that there was really no need to talk to him, so she got up and walked to the door. Do you think you can leave? Lan Ding's cold voice sounded behind her. Cheen suddenly turned around and was then pushed against the door by force. Chapter 2969. Cheen's eyes widened as she looked at the man in front of her. She wanted to struggle, but he held the back of her head and stopped her from moving. She was kissed firmly. The taste in her mouth was very sweet, so sweet that she felt sleepy and sleepy. Her body softened slightly, but her eyes were still looking at him. Lan Yu's body pressed her firmly against the door. Even though she was asleep, he still kissed her for a long time. It was a very deep kind of kiss. When the kiss was enough, he carried her to the big bed in the lounge and put her on the white sheets. She slept quietly while he curled his body and lifted his hands to take off his coat piece by piece, followed by his shirt. There was no emotion on his face, as if he was on a mission. When everything was removed, he leaned over and kissed her, his big palm moving down firmly. When Cheen woke up, it was already afternoon. She opened her sore eyes and felt that her body was even more sore and painful. Her whole body felt as if it had been run over. It hurt like hell to move. She suddenly sat up, which also affected a certain part of her body. She lifted the quilt and was stunned. Then she pulled it up and was in a daze. She had been raped. No, It should be said that she was raped. She was not a fool. When she was about to leave, Lan Yu fed her medicine when he kissed her. There was nothing wrong with the tea, but he had prepared the medicine. Damn it. He had been waiting for her to take the bait. Just when Qin Shun was in a daze, a handsome man stood at the door. It was none other than the beast who raped her. Lan Yu stood at the door, smiled faintly, and walked over slowly. He held a document in his hand and threw it in front of her. Qin Shun, this is a contract. Take a look and decide. Qin Shun took a look at him and opened it. But as she read it, her face began to turn pale. Rome biology is in a bad situation in France. Mrs. Rome's net worth has gone from hundreds of billions to probably nothing. Lan Yu leaned against the door and smiled faintly. Qin Shun put down the report in her hand and looked up at Lan Yu. Did you do it? Then she took a black shirt from the side and put it on. That was his clothes, and she couldn't find her own. Suddenly, Qin Shun wanted smoke. She didn't smoke, but she wanted to smoke now. She was very annoyed. She knew all too well that Lan Yu was treating her like Madame Roan right now. Yes, Mrs. Roan. Also to deal with. The infatuation he had shown from the beginning to the end was all a facade. He hated her to the core. Qin Shun put on his clothes and stood by the window. He turned around. Do you have a cigarette? She didn't participate in the company's research, but it was not to be. It was a company of the company of the company. Of the company of the company of Rome was. In the past 3 years, she had not participated in the research and development of the company, but she, Qin Shun, had the final say in what kind of results to be listed. Once the company was disbanded, she could not imagine what would happen. Lan Yu threw the pack of cigarettes over. I'll give you 10 minutes. Qin Shun lit the cigarette skillfully. This action came from her instinct. She was stunned. Then, she took a puff and asked with her back facing him, You obviously hate me. You know that I have forgotten everything. I left you because I was with someone else. Why do you still insist? She turned her head. Will you be happy if you marry me? Chapter 2970. Qin Shun smoked and narrowed her eyes. After a moment, she said, I can marry you, but Rongyu won't change his surname, and I don't want to live with you. You have to live with me. It doesn't matter if you don't change your surname. I have no interest in letting Rong Lei's children call me dad. Lan Yu said coldly. Also, we will keep our marriage a secret. Qin Shun chuckled. Didn't you just announce our engagement to the outside world? He looked at her, his eyes quiet. Then, Qin Shun understood that he would let the outside world think that his announcement was just a public relations trick and that they wouldn't be together. She didn't make a sound and just stood there smoking. Carrying him. She was still wearing his shirt, just like before, but her short hair had become long, feminine hair. But when she stood there and smoked like this, Lan Yu felt that she had come back. She was still Qin Shun, heartless. He walked over slowly and hugged her from behind. His thin lips touched her shoulder and slowly moved her neck. Tell me your decision. Will you let the Rong family be finished, or will you marry me? His voice was very gentle, but this gentleness made her feel indescribably scared. Qin Shun didn't move and was still smoking. How many years? What? He was still kissing her. Qin Shun's voice became even more indifferent. I mean, how many years of marriage? He was probably annoyed by her attitude, so he bit her neck hard and she let out a light cry. And she finally wasn't calm anymore, which made him feel better. He was willing to answer her. 1 year. 1 year was enough. 1 year was enough for him to have a taste of her and then kick her away mercilessly. Qin Shun frowned. My shelf life is only 1 year. Lan Yu didn't expect her to say that. She wouldn't have cared about this in the past. He smiled coldly. What else? Do you want me to feed you for the rest of your life? Qin Shun calmed down and said, I can sign it, but I have a job and I can't be with you all the time. Besides, Rongyu needs to go to school, and you probably don't have the mood to take care of someone else's son. So, you can leave him with my mother and I will bring him to live with us when I'm free. If you agree, I can sign it. Of course, I hope we can live separately. Lan Yu sneered. I'll summon you when I need you. He despised her, but even as he despised her, he lifted her shirt and took her just like that. Qin Shun gritted his teeth. We haven't registered our marriage yet, nor are we married. I've done it many times, Qin Shun. I like your body, but it doesn't mean that I can tolerate you every time." As he spoke, he turned her around and carried her to the windowsill. After that, neither of them had time to talk. His technique was very good, which was obviously much better than the previous time. He was not as impatient as before. At this time, it was very punishing. Chun pushed his shoulder. "Lanyu, put me down." After all, she only had one affair with him in her memory. She couldn't accept this trick. Lanyu kissed her and carried her to the bed while kissing her. He didn't make things difficult for her and did as she wished. However, Chun immediately regretted it. He used the traditional way, but he was so barbaric that he didn't look like a civilized human. He was still wearing clothes from top brands and accessories, but his actions were like that of a beast. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.